On today's Transport Evolved, 60 minutes screws up, Polar leaves us in the cold, and the right to build your own. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 196 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Friday, April 4th, 2014. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
And I'm Mark Chatterley. How are you today, Nikki?
I think you probably could tell when I was saying, what day is it, Mark?
it's one day in April. Look, don't worry, I'm drinking a mug of coffee that's as big as my head. That's what I'm doing right now.
I have consumed way too much coffee this week. I've been on the road. I've covered about 600 miles, all in the name of electric cars. So,
it's very cool.
We can't really complain. Lots of news stories this week to catch up on. And hello to people who are catching up with the show for the very first time. We have a new logo. We're not displaying it today because we haven't had a chance to ingest it into our stream. But we do have a new logo, don't we, Mark?
We do. It's a very nice, very funky logo. I've now got jobs ahead of me to update the website and everywhere the logo could possibly appear to make sure the old one is fades away and the new one comes in. It's very lovely though.
It is fantastic. It was done. It was done in the last week. The competition we ran to choose the logo has ended early, but I can kind of describe it. It's a steering wheel with a T and an E in it, which I think is brilliant. Transport
steering wheel made from a T and E.
And a T and an E, and it's just like the old school steering wheels. A man with us today, a guest on the show who knows all about steering wheels from California, although not originally California. We have a gentleman from Russia on the show today, Mr. Valery. And I'm going to ask you, Valery, to say your second name because I'm going to screw it up.
It's Miftakhov.
Miftakhov. Yes. There you go. Valery Miftakhov. Right. Did I say it right?
Yep.
Ah, fantastic. I've been checking the spelling as well because I'm notorious. I'm terrible at names. But Valery runs. He works at Google, but he also runs a company that some of you may have heard of. It's called Electric Motor Works, and it's based in California, and it supports the DIY EV community. Right, Valery?
That's correct. DIY, open source, and we have long roots from the EV conversion market, and then now we're working mostly on the EV production products, products for EV production cars, and enjoying, working with a lot of people who worked with before and a lot of new ones.
Now, we covered you, would have been a year ago when you ran a very successful Kickstarter campaign.
That's
for something
correct.
called the Juice Box. Now, until that point, the Juice Box was something that my children took to school in the lunchbox. So tell us very briefly about Juice Box. We'll come back to it later on the show because it's going to be relevant to one of the topics we're going to be discussing. But tell everyone at home a little bit about the Juice Box.
Yeah, absolutely. So Juice Box is an open source EVSE. It's one of the most powerful in the market, running up to 60 amps, 15 kilowatts from a 240 volt outlet. The reason we did this, we were basically looking at all our products that we had for conversion markets, EV conversion market, and said how we can leverage some of the technologies and experience in power conversion, power electronics that we developed. And we looked at what's being offered, or what was being offered at that time to EV drivers in terms of charging. And we saw that anything that was in any way more powerful than the very, very basic was pretty much $1,000 and up. Yeah. And we know, having worked on the cars, having worked on charging products, we know that there is not a lot that goes into the EVSE.
Right.
So we decided to start this Kickstarter project, which was at the time a $99 EV charger or charging station. And it's been a pretty good success. It's been about 8 months ago, and now we're shipping all these products. We actually crossed 1,000 mark on the number of units that we're getting out. And we're on version 8.75 right
Oh,
now.
that is insane. That's
Yeah,
brilliant. Valerie, I'm going to say something to you now, and you can hold me to this. When I come stateside, which I'm hoping to do next year to live, I would like to have 2 of your juice boxes because I run a Raspberry Pi at home. I love the idea of integrating my house and my car and everything else. So I'm going to have to get 2 of your juice boxes and build them with the wireless and everything else. Now, it's based on, you use the Arduino controller, don't you?
that's right. That's right. So we're now using one of the smaller Arduino controllers, and moving up to a larger one very soon.
That's brilliant, and it's fantastic, fantastic kit. And I've seen photographs of it. I've seen videos of it in action. Haven't seen it in action firsthand, but I've heard lots of good reports. Well, but one of the other things that you've been up to lately, which just blows my mind away, is, and again, we'll come to talk about this a little bit later on in the show. You are a regular on the My Nissan Leaf website. You've got a Leaf, haven't you, Valerie?
That's right. So we
Yeah.
got a number of electric cars just to test things that we built. Yes.
So you've got a Nissan Leaf. You've also got a RAV4 EV. And a couple of weeks ago, I saw a fantastic video online of you charging a Nissan Leaf from a RAV4 EV, which is fantastic. But also the charging equipment that you sell, the DIY, build it yourself, or you can buy it as a completed product charging unit for your car, your DIY conversion. You've modified that now to work, at least in I guess, a prototype phase with something like the Nissan Leaf, which is a CHAdeMO.
That's correct. That's correct.
And you're working with a guy called Joel, who's printed a 3D charging connector.
That's right. Yeah, the whole collaboration was pretty amazing, and this is why we love open source as a concept, because it attracts a lot of engineers, a lot of people who are very passionate about EVs, very passionate about making change in the world, and they contribute their efforts, just like Joel, and there are a few others who were involved in this project, and we were doing the sort of main power electronics, power hardware, and a little bit of CHAdeMO controller code, but a lot of people were helping out, so this was great community effort.
Now, I always feel really stupid when I go onto the My Nissan Leaf website because there's so many fantastic projects going on. I mean, I'm actually gonna log into one of them right now. This one, Leaf Spy, which runs on your Kindle. I don't know if anyone can see that. I use this all the time, as Mark will testify to, especially when I'm making long distance trips, because it tells me with much greater accuracy how full my battery is, how many kilowatt hours I actually have left in my battery pack. That was from another one of the guys on the My Nissan Leaf forum. I like to think of myself as someone who's, worked on electric cars, both DIY and factory built cars over the years. I've modded my Leaf a little bit, but nothing compared to what you guys are doing over in California right now. And it really blows my mind. And I really love reading the forums because it encourages me to go, oh, I could do that to my car, or I could do that to my car. It's got me, one guy posted, and again, it's all open source, a piece of code to GitHub, which is like a place that you can store open source code that's being worked on in a collaborative environment for contacting Nissan's car wings using your Raspberry Pi. And I've got that running on my Raspberry Pi at the moment. So my studio has no windows. It has one door. I can't see my car out on the driveway, but I can have this little program running in the window, checking my car every 10 minutes to see how full it is, so I can watch the state of charge go up. It's brilliant. It really is. So well done to everybody who's working on open source stuff. We're going to come back to that later on in the show. But we're going to move to our first main story. It's a short story, the Cadillac ELR. Now, Valerie, I don't know if you've ever driven one yet.
No.
No. For those who haven't seen them or driven them, it's essentially, and I'm going to get told off by some of my esteemed colleagues in the automotive world. John Volker drove one recently, and he said it isn't actually just a Chevy Volt, but it's essentially a Chevy Volt in a tuxedo. It's based on the Voltec drivetrain that comes in the Chevrolet Volt, and the same electric motor, same engine, and it gives you a range extended EV capabilities. It's a coupe rather than a hatchback or a sedan. and it's designed with a little bit more performance in mind. But this week, Cadillac recalled the ELR for a problem with its electronic stability control system, its ESC system. Somebody actually said to me, because he put it on the website as ESC, someone said, is the escape key broken? No. No. What it is it's the system that controls the wheels and or monitors the wheels to ensure that if you get in a skid, or if you hit a patch of ice, or if you go around a corner a bit too fast and one of the wheels breaks loose, that the car doesn't crash. I think that's probably the safest way of putting it, Valerie?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a computer controlled system, traction controlled system. And there was a problem with it in the ELR, and essentially it was a bit like the Nissan Leaf problem we reported last week. In certain situations, the ESC doesn't tell you that it's disabled.
It doesn't switch the light on the dash. It doesn't switch
the light on the dash. So it means you could be driving a little bit hard, expecting your car to catch you should something bad happen, and in reality it doesn't, because it's got the system switched off. Now, I've got two minds to this. It was being treated as quite a serious recall, because as NHTSA said, and as Cadillac said, in certain circumstances you could end up crashing your car if you don't realise that the traction control, or sorry, the electronic stability control is switched off. Traction control is something different. But I should also note at this point that I think everybody in the world should learn to drive a car without traction control or stability control, because I think it teaches you so much about how to handle a car. I think you should get experience when you're learning to drive in a rear-wheel drive car, with a front-wheel drive car. I also think they should put you in a big, powerful car and show you what can happen. You know, if you're in a car with 200 brake horsepower going to the rear wheels and you get into a skid, this is what happens.
I'm worried about the Nikki theoretical driving tests. What you need to pass it? Well, you have to have at least one major crash while doing your test and survive.
No,
and then you'll understand the true dangerousness of the car.
Okay, Finland. Finland is a case in point. Finland and Norway, both really, really tough driving tests to pass, because it's an ongoing multi-year process. You have to have experience in driving in all weather conditions and at night in order to pass your test. I've talked about this before. First time I went on my I went out in a car on my own after passing my driving test at night. And bear in mind, I learnt to drive in the summer, so I never drove at night up to that point. I hit a hedgehog, and I felt guilty to this day about hitting a hedgehog on my first night out on my own.
Oh.
And I just think that we expect kids to drive in towns and cities, and we teach them, you know, the rules of the road at least moderately well in the UK. Other parts of the world, it really is just a trip round the block. Can you stop the car? Can you reverse it? Yes, okay. But I think we also need to teach people how to drive cars that don't have the technology that we now rely on in the modern world. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Well, it's. I suppose there's the argument that you tend to drive your test in newer cars. That I was driving my test when I was doing it in my early 20s in a new Ford Ka at the time. But the car I had when I finished my test was an old Volkswagen Polo. I went from a car that was 1 year old to one that was 15 years old.
Ooh.
So, and I imagine that's the case for most people passing their tests. People who do driving tests tend to have a lease and have a new car.
Yeah.
And then you don't buy that car when you pass your test. You go and buy a cheap 300 quid banger.
Partly because of the insurance problems. I don't know how you feel about that, Valerie.
Yeah, but you know, the problem with all this modern technology is that, you know, you move from one car to another and they behave differently, right? So the stability control might be implemented differently across different cars, and you're basically, the more stability control and other interventions you have, the further you are from the basic physics of driving, right? And then you can't really. In some cars I've driven, you can't really predict what the car will do in difficult situations. That's not good, right? So I'm totally with you when you say, hey, you got to switch it all off and learn to drive your car when it's all off, right? Because, you know, maybe you get into ELR one day and it will switch off by itself, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, powerful cars. Mark and I, first time behind the wheel of a Tesla. I think you had that moment, didn't you, Mark, when you floored it and went, "Ooh, crikey!"
What? Yeah, just the first time, not every.
I had a hot rod, a 8-litre K-series engined Morris Minor hot rod. Now the Morris Minor originally had, I think, I'm probably going to get this wrong now. It was a 1.1 litre engine which put somewhere in the region of about 30 horsepower out the back. My modified hot rod had nearly 200 in a detuned state. And it was rear-wheel drive. You could go around a corner in second gear just by blipping the throttle. Not changing the steering wheel, just by blipping the throttle. That's the kind of thing I think people need to learn. Not bad driving techniques, you understand. Anyway, on to the next story before I get into even more trouble. All right. So, this week, Tesla got an unusual ally. Now, for the first time in this ongoing battle between Tesla Motors, who wants to sell cars directly to consumers through mall-style, almost like Apple-style stores, and auto dealer associations who want Tesla to go through the franchise dealer process, a company, a CEO of AutoNation, the CEO of AutoNation stood up for Tesla's right to sell directly to consumers, which is kind of backwards to what we've been getting from every other auto dealer and auto dealer association in the US. It's brilliant. Mike Jackson, CEO of AutoNation, it's the largest dealership in the largest auto dealer group in the US, says that Tesla should be allowed to sell its electric cars direct to customers the way it wants to, because if you don't, there's going to be an even bigger consequence for the auto industry. And he cites, this is the best bit, sorry, Mike. He cites as an example Tesla's Gigafactory. So Tesla, not allowed to sell direct to customers in Arizona, not allowed to sell directly to customers in Texas. So Tesla goes up to Arizona and Texas and goes, "Hi, we're Tesla. You may have heard of us. You banned us from selling cars directly to your citizens. We're thinking about building a little old battery factory in your area. It's going to be about $4 billion to build and operate for the first however many years. It's going to take up 1,000 acres. And yeah, we'd like to build it in your state. There's just a little problem." I mean, Mark, you're going to say?
Well, that's it. I suppose he's not taking Tesla's side because he wants to help the consumer. It's not because he believes in the direct-to-customer model. He's taking Tesla's side because it makes financial sense for businesses. And I would imagine he's got business interests in some of these states. And that's probably why. Because what he's essentially saying is Tesla's now got to the point where they are playing with the big boys and they can blackmail in the worst sense, if you're looking at it from negative point of view, or leverage, if you're looking at it from the good point of the word, their own way into states. So they can say, of the 4 states we're planning to build the Gigafactory, well, we're not going to build it in these 2 because they don't allow us to sell directly to customers. And because Tesla now has that power, and that power is likely only going to grow, and Elon's power is only likely to grow, to be fair, with SpaceX and his other endeavors, that I think the decision for him to support them comes more from that than any sort of this is best for the customer, which slightly annoys me a little bit. It's just a business-orientated decision.
I can understand where you're coming from, but hey, it is at least some support. And I don't have a problem with Mike saying, look, this is the sensible business thing to do. I guess I'm just glad that somebody somewhere is going, okay, this is the sensible business decision. I know which battles to win, and I know which battles I'm not going to win, and I know which battles I might win if I just let my opponent do what they think they need to do to win. Maybe that's his game plan all along. He's got a big background in the auto industry. I mean, the other interesting thing I'm going to point out here is he used to work at Mercedes-Benz, so he's no stranger to Tesla.
Yeah.
And I think this is great, and I hope other auto dealers and auto dealer groups get on board and go, you know what, he's right. I think maybe I should behave in the same way. It's going to be a long uphill struggle, though, isn't it, Valerie?
Yeah, I think you're right. And the tide is moving a little bit, right? And more people will get more comfortable with the idea that hey, consumers deserve the rights to buy their cars directly from the manufacturer. And I think, Mark, you're right as well. There are economic reasons for people to be a little bit more accepting of what Tesla wants or what Elon Musk wants, right? Because economic power is shifting a little bit, and with all the Gigafactory and who knows what else is coming out, right? But Tesla has plans for hundreds of thousands of vehicles, and they probably longer term. There might be some situation where when Tesla doesn't own the entire ecosystem, right? When they start building millions of cars, and it's useful to have allies of that size or any company out there.
Always. And it's a massive company. It's far bigger than Tesla. All right, moving on to April Fools. It was April Fool's Day on Tuesday, Mark, was it? Tuesday?
Yes,
it was
that's right.
Tuesday. It's been one of those weeks. And we ran a story. We did an April Fool's. So I hope you all got the April Fool's and you weren't convinced to believe that there was, in fact, a new system in San Francisco with cantilevers and the trolley bus network or electric buses, as I'm reliably informed, in that area, allowing EVs to up and go. There are some signs in the article, namely the guy's name is Ebron. What did I call him?
I can't. Ebron.
Somebody or other. It was a synonym for Musk. The woman who does the toast. Although San Francisco is big on toast at the moment, apparently San Francisco is really hooked on toast. The Sally Burr, the name of the woman delivering fresh toast in Nissan Leafs with cantilevers on the top. Burr obviously being the French word for butter. So I did throw a few ones in there, but there were some other great April Fools. And funnily enough, Mark, we weren't the only ones to go with a cantilever idea.
No, there was another blog out there who does a sort of EV transport or eco transport, and they went with a cantilever system, but they used Priuses.
Yep.
So the idea that it was actually almost physically tethered to it because it could only break off of the connection for maybe 2 minutes.
Yes, it's insane. We had my favourite one, I think, was the Mini Cooper T, which is this one here. A T-powered Mini, which was from
biofuel.
BMW UK. They actually sent this press release out the day before April Fool's.
Yeah, embargoed. It
was embargoed, which I thought was funny. But yeah, T-powered, which obviously
the other one was quite
Professor
good as well.
Elemental would be pretty good with. And then there was the Driving Fast simulator.
Yes.
Valerie, did you hear either of these?
No, I didn't see I did see the San Francisco one. Actually, a lot of people on a few forums were taken by it. Oh, that was interesting. I must admit, for a couple of seconds, I was like, wow, this might be a good idea.
The number of people who said this is going to be a good idea. I have it on good authority from a good friend and colleague of mine that they were banned from doing stories because they wrote too realistic ones, and I suspect I might have the same problem next year. But BMW came up with one called the Force Injection Booster Technology.
That was my favourite. BMW are very, very good at doing these, and they always put a lot of effort into it.
But the technology, I mean, the physics gave the game away, Mark, so tell the physics.
Yeah. Well, the idea of this one is that you buy this nice performance BMW, but it spends most of its time below 20 miles an hour in traffic. So it had a force injection system, which would simulate driving fast. So you'd press a button and it would use stored energy from the engine, which I think was a sly reference to regen energy, because it's the only way I can think it would work. And then it would then turn the fans on really, 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 really fast to blow air into your face, to pull your face back, at the same time giving you electrical shocks in the bum to give you that bum clenching feeling. Just absolutely brilliant.
That's brilliant. I think and then the other one that was the one I thought was kind of could try harder, unfortunately, was Tesla.
Yeah.
We talked about this on the way to London the other day. Tesla's one was we're going to get rid of autonomous driving technology. We're going to can our autonomous driving project because we've decided pets can drive cars better than humans. They tried cats.
Cats had a tendency to go off the cliffs.
Cats had a tendency to go off the cliffs, and dogs lost concentration.
And chase squirrels.
And chase squirrels. So Tesla has now decided on April Fool's Day that it was going to let fish drive Tesla Model S's. And of course, as those who watched the show a couple of months ago will know, there was actually a project involving a fish and image recognition and some kind of semi-autonomous or semi-intelligent machine that would interpret the direction the fish swam in as being the direction the car should move. But we talked about this one, and we just decided that it was released late on April Fool's Day, and Mark and I just went, it almost sounds as if someone from the Tesla press team, and I hate to say this, they're never going to email me again, they went down the pub late on Monday evening and went, oh crap, it's April Fool's Day tomorrow, what are we going to do, guys? But they just
came up with dogs. I can imagine them sort of watching YouTube and having this idea in the back of their head like 3 months ago, and having written it down in a notepad and going, dogs driving cars, and then just flipping through this notepad and going, that's what we want to do. Why? Okay, we'll do this.
All right, time for an ad break. If you're watching live, there won't be any ad break, but if you're watching on the YouTube afterwards, please watch the ad. We'll be right back. Part 2, guys. Part 2. We've got a great show lined up today. But we're talking about April Fools in the first section, and now we're going to talk about how 60 Minutes made a fool of itself last Sunday. It covered Elon Musk and Tesla, and it had some footage of the Tesla Model S driving through some tunnels in, I think it was in Norway. It was Tesla stock footage that Tesla provided. But the Foley guys had got a little bit carried away, hadn't they, Mark?
Yes, well,
we should probably explain what Foley is, because not everyone knows what Foley is.
So Foley is the art of playing or including sound effects into scenes. So in movies and TV shows where you've got a scene where people are dancing in a club and you can still hear the two main characters talking to each other, that's because in reality it's filmed with actors dancing to nothing. And so Foley is the art of putting the sound in afterwards, be that the backing track of the music or squeaks or honks or whatever is needed in the scene. And this happens on pretty much any broadcast that goes out, because you tend to have very directional mics. So that car going past in the background, you should be able to hear the engine, but the mics didn't actually pick it up. So you put artificial sound on top of it. And I imagine what's happened here is there's a Foley artist working for I can't remember who it was. CBS. I can never remember all the acronyms that they have on American TV. It's just seen a car drive past and gone, some car footage here. Oh, I need to put an engine sound on that, and just dragged and dropped and off it went, not realizing that car was the Model S. And the whole point of it is it's meant to be silent as it glides away.
The funny thing about this is Jalopnik, who's not always that pro Tesla, and Fox News are the two ones who picked it up first. Valerie, did you get anyone talking to you about this?
No, I just heard about it, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh dear! And then to their credit, they did admit that they made a mistake. But I'm guessing that particular Foley artist will not be allowed to let that one down. All right. So sorry.
Oh no. So no. Go ahead. It's all good. I think we've covered the other story that links into it later on. So that's all good.
Okay.
Or links into it in my head.
So April 1st. Was also the day that the Polar Network in the UK was going to go from its yearly £20 subscription, £10 subscription every year, to a monthly system or a pay-as-you-go system. And we talked about this story. We've been hyping this story up a little bit because we're a little bit angry in the UK about it. I think I'm allowed to say this one knocks me off a little bit.
Yeah, especially when you look at the prices, no one expected charging to always be free, but we knew we'd have to pay. We're quite happy to pay, but the prices seemed so over the top. And in some situations, plug-in hybrids like the Volt could end up being cheaper for them to drive on petrol than it is to drive on electricity gained from one of these charging stations. Yeah. Which is ridiculous.
We've actually talked to people who said, I'm not going to buy any, I'm going to stop owning an EV. My next car is going to be a petrol car, which is sad. Anyway, Polar Network, we talked about the pricing a couple of weeks ago about what Polar was going to do. But then sometime last week or the week before, Polar quietly dropped the prices. It said it was going to start charging on April 1st, We noticed. Several people told us and tipped us off. We did some research. And we went, yeah, you're right. The prices have got less. They got smaller, which is a good thing for EV drivers. So we rang up Polar and Chargemaster, who runs Polar, and went, so what's the reason behind the price drops? The prices haven't dropped. They've always been this price. They've never changed. We were just clarifying a few things. We had a screenshot of the site from before the prices went down. And we sat them side by side, didn't we, Mark?
We did.
And Valery, you're a maths and a physics graduate, or just a physics graduate?
Physics, yeah.
Yeah, so maths doesn't lie, does it, generally?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so maths doesn't lie. And we worked out there was a substantial difference. But anyway, that was the first story from Polar last week. And then on the day, on April the 1st, the day it was all due to switch on, nothing happened, Mark.
No, yeah, it was a bit of a worry. The website didn't launch. The app wasn't in the store, which allows you to access these charging points. And there was no information about what was happening, whether these tariffs had come into effect or not, which left people who use these chargers in a bit of a quandary as to whether plugging in would mean they got charged or not. And it was just kind of a lack of communication, I guess.
Well, this is the interesting thing, because I had to use one of those Polar Network charging stations yesterday, and I really didn't want to, but I only had one card that worked, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll just plug in. And I got all the cards out that I have, my wallet of 10 or more, RFID cards, swiped them all in turn, and the only one that worked was the Chargemaster / Polar one. And it let me in and it started to charge, and I used about 6 kilowatt hours of power. So I'm wondering now whether I'm going to get billed or not. What do you think, Mark?
No, I don't think their system was up and running. I wouldn't. If you do get paid, then you've used the system and pay it. But I don't think you will, because I don't think their monitoring system is ready. If the main website wasn't ready, I doubt the back end system was ready.
Well, this is the funny thing, because they did their whole the placeholder text still existed on the website on April 1st, right? And we did a follow-up story. Was it April 2nd, Mark? April 3rd, we did a follow-up story?
Yeah, it was a day or two later. Yeah.
Right. And we said, oh, look, the Polar Network website is still not running. The main page still says your website is ready, but nothing else. If you go to /index.php, which is, as geeks will tell you, is if the server's running on PHP, then that's the address that it goes to. So the server had not been properly set up. But when we went on to that, we were able to see essentially what was there of the site. And we got some screen grabs of some of the pages, didn't we? One of them being, if you want to use the pay-as-you-go system, you're going to have to top up first. Minimum credit of £20.
Yeah, the system which is being billed is you do not need to register in advance. Then the next paragraph says all you need to do is download our app, enter your details and register, and then prepay £20. So it's not a pay-as-you-go system, and it's not a non-registration system. Which was slightly interesting, I thought.
But the most important thing, the most interesting thing, and we have to thank Matt for this one. One of our listeners, Matt, tipped us off to this one. In the privacy agreement, it says we may give your data to BMW. I don't want you to give my charging data to BMW. Valery, this is exactly the reason why you support the open source system, right?
Oh, part of the reason. But you gotta think about the business models and all those things around charging, right? The main problem with EV charging for companies that try to run these networks is that electricity is too cheap. Okay, so people will always compare what you're charging them with what they're paying in their houses. And in the US, I can speak about US numbers, right? When you get charged, say $1 an hour, as it is common in a few installations, $1 an hour. This is actually a little bit overpriced relative to what you expect. Or in some places you charge $2, $2.50. People compare it to what they pay for electricity at their houses, and they say, well, I'm not going to pay for it. There's a little bit of vicious circle there, right? So really, this whole infrastructure, charging infrastructure industry is in need of new business models.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
where to extract money other than from the drivers. And you know, I think there are some good ideas around there, and we are exploring a couple, and I'm sure something will happen. But before that happens, the rollout of the public charging, will be, you know, dependent on government subsidies, mostly.
And I think you're right. I think, you know, that is the charging, the comparison to electricity is a problem. I think a lot of people wouldn't have a problem paying more for electricity if they knew that the stations were reliable and that there were enough and they were well run, etc., etc. I think my biggest sorry, I was going to say, Mark, my biggest problem with the Polar network is that it's almost ostrich-like in its behaviour towards EV owners, and it's treating EV owners like idiots. And most of the EV owners I know are either, or both, they're either highly trained university graduates or postgraduates, or perhaps even have doctorates. And so they're intelligent people who understand how systems work, how business works, understand how, you know, these systems need to work in order to get money to pay for more charging stations. But a lot of them are engineers and geeks who don't like being taken for fools. There's another network in the UK, and Mark, I hope you don't mind me carrying on at this point. We've got a kind of a breaking story, haven't we, Mark?
We do. I'm going to say we do.
We do. You didn't sound very convinced there. So Ecotricity in the UK is a public charging company. It's also a utility company. It's a utility company first, okay? So Ecotricity is known for producing renewable energy. It focuses on renewable energy generation. Any profits it gets from the sale of its electricity, it plows back into buying, building, supporting more renewable energy generation methods. So it doesn't have shareholders. And it has been working for the past, 3 years, with some partners, including Nissan, on the electric highway, which is a network of UK-wide rapid quick charging stations. But there's been some problems with reliability. A lot of the charging stations have been broken. They keep failing. They keep having ground fault errors and all sorts of other problems. They've become a bit notorious in the EV world. Lots of Leaf drivers rant about them on a regular basis, saying, I'm not driving on the electric highway because they don't work. Ecotricity should be sorting it out, blah, 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 blah. Well, today I got an email from Ecotricity, and a disclaimer, I knew that this story was coming because I'd spoken off the record with some of the folks at Ecotricity. And they had a massive meeting with all of the people involved in manufacturing, building, maintaining the charging stations, and they've identified a fault, which
a design fault, which has not nothing to do with Ecotricity or anybody. You know, it's not their fault. But they very publicly went, okay, we've identified a design fault. And they sent this. Did you get the email as well, Mark? I did, yes.
Yes. And they've sent this email out to everybody very publicly stating what the problem was. And I think that's the way to win friends and influence people. And I also think it's the way of making your customers happy and ensuring that if at some point, and I don't know if Ecotricity will, but I suspect it will, at some point in the future, start charging you for plugging in your car, you'll feel more happy doing it with them because they're treating you like intelligent human beings than treating you like babies who don't understand.
And their network is inherently more useful. They're rolling out rapid chargers and fast chargers, not 16-amp posts. So the two different models, the Polar model seems to be trying to go towards you're parking in a big multi-story car park in a city centre, but they don't follow that business decision through. That business decision leads to thinking, well, we should have 20 EV spaces all in a row, all exclusive parking for EVs in all the multi-story car parks around town. But they don't do that. They install two in one multi-story car park underground, which requires a 3G signal, which the charging stations can't get, so they don't work. It's a kind of, they're halfway towards their business model, but haven't quite gone all the way. Whereas Ecotricity very much went, we want to make travel along the motorways possible. And that's what they're working towards with sort of single-minded dedication. All of the charging stations they install tend to be on motorways or just off motorways.
Right. But as Valery, I'm sure you'll testify, charging infrastructure, especially rapid charging, can be quite complicated to get right. Oh, Valery? He's gone.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm back. Yeah, so, it's interesting, this particular company, because it's a combination of a utility and the EV charging network. There are some very interesting synergies that you can think about between the producer or distributor of electricity and the consumers of electricity. And specifically here, you have the consumers that can store energy. Right, so you can imagine that utility can get a lot of benefit from various what they call utility or grid services administered by themselves to themselves. For example, rapid load management and demand management that they could actually get some free cash flow from and apply it towards their pricing of the charging. Because today, I don't know how it's done in the UK, but in the US, in all the interconnect regions and all the utilities, they actually have to pay to a number of third-party companies to provide demand regulation. And this is not trivial amounts of money. And you can actually think about the business model around that. So I'm sure something good comes out of it.
Yeah. I think you're right. We should probably move on to the next story now. I'm just trying to decide whether we should skip a story or not. We're going to cover this one really quickly. We're going to cover the next two ones really quickly because there's one of the final segment stories I want to give some time to. The Renault Zoey is sold in Europe. It's an electric hatchback. It's like I suppose you would call it a super mini over here. Yeah. It's kind of Clio sized, if you know what a Renault Clio is. And it uses a chameleon charger. First, only car on the market to use that, apart from one in South Korea, which we're not going to count because we're focusing on Europe for this story. And it can charge 43 kilowatts AC all the way down to 3 kilowatts AC using an onboard charger. It doesn't need any external charging stations, unlike the DC charging stations, which do. One of the things that Renault's done with all of its electric cars in Europe is you cannot buy the batteries with the car. You can buy the car, you have to lease the batteries. Doesn't matter if you're leasing the car or buying it or renting it or what.
Or buying it secondhand.
Or buying it secondhand. You have to lease the batteries. And this has been a decision from the get-go with Renault. It's different from its alliance partner Nissan, who's always made the batteries available with the car, and more recently in Europe, you can lease from Nissan as well. But over in Norway, Renault recently started selling the Zoe with its battery pack included, which prompted several sites, including Inside EVs and another couple of sites, to speculate that Renault was about to end the battery rental program and go to do what everybody else does and bundle the car with a battery pack included. We spoke to Renault this week, and Renault told us that it's to do with tax and tax incentives in Norway, right, Mark?
Yes, so in Norway, there's some amazing EV incentives. Pretty much, if you buy a zero emissions car, you don't pay sales tax. And the sales tax you do pay on any other car is linked to how dirty the tailpipe is. So you go from zero emissions cars, which have zero sales tax, all the way up to big conking 4x4s which have 100% sales tax on them, which is doubles the price, obviously, which is a lot to pay. But it appears that the incentive doesn't apply, or doesn't apply in full, I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, on a battery rental EV. And so in order to allow the Zoe to compete in the market with other EVs that would have no sales tax, it had to bundle the battery in as part of the car to make the incentive apply and therefore make it a viable choice for people living in Norway. It makes perfect sense from Renault's point of view, but it just kind of annoys me that if Renault's gone through the process of working out how much it would cost and how much they should sell it for and how much the battery's worth, and they've done all those calculations for one country. Why not just offer it everywhere? But I suppose that it's a executive decision, and Norway is the exception rather than the rest of Europe.
The main reason behind this, I think, Renault wouldn't actually admit to this, but I think the main reason behind this is the same reason that Elon Musk wants people to lease cars moving forward.
Guaranteed.
Battery technology is moving so quickly, but the actual contents of the battery pack are worth quite a lot of money. So if you retain ownership of that, and you know that when that lease is done, when that battery has reached the end of its life, you can you retain ownership of it. You both stop batteries from going into landfill. You can ensure that they will get recycled, but you've also got, as you just said, Mark, a guaranteed value. Valery, what's your opinion on leasing?
Oh, but also, there are a couple of things, right? You get, like you mentioned already, guaranteed ownership of the batteries when they're getting off the cars, right? But my impression is, or my knowledge is, that most of these batteries won't get just recycled, right? They go into stationary storage for grid applications and various other things, right? Maybe home storage to buffer some solar or wind generation activity. So normally when the batteries are rated for their lifetime in cycles, they're rated up to the point when they lose just 20% of their capacity. So 80% of the energy density and energy that you can store in the battery is still there. It's perfectly usable. It's just not as dense. So for mobile application, it probably doesn't work, or doesn't work as well. And by that time, the technology will have moved on. So, but you can still use it for stationary applications. Also, I think the rental model is interesting because it deals with sort of psychology of the buyer a little bit, right? So today, for example, an average, maybe I'll talk about the United States numbers, but an average American driver drives maybe 30 miles every day, so 10, 12,000 miles a year. That means they spend maybe a couple of $100s a month on gasoline, maybe 150 to 250, depending on what kind of car you drive. So if you go to those people and say, well, we're going to give you an electric car, but you're not going to pay any premium for it, you just pay us your gas money, right? So those same $200, $250 a month, and you get a battery, and you don't worry about all these price premiums that electric cars have and all that. I'm sure there is some kind of logic behind a rental that has roots in buying psychology of people.
Yeah, and the financial element as well. You make it more like a petrol car.
Right.
You make the costs more like a petrol car.
Yeah, people like familiar. Right, so it takes a lot of time to educate people about something fundamentally new, and there is a segment always of early adopters that they don't like familiar, they like new, and they will buy new, but that usually is a small percent of population. So to go after sort of early majority or mainstream, you would have to make it familiar enough so that they're not getting spooked by the technology. And I think that's one of the ways they're trying to do it.
Yeah. Be interested to see what people think at home. Would you be more tempted to buy a Renault if you could buy the car outright? Let us know. All right, we're moving on to the final story of the segment. Mark, are you ready?
I am.
You look a little distracted there. Oh no, we've got two more. Aha. New type of charging station launched this week, or is to launch next week, in fact, in Germany. It's called the Charge Lounge. It's great. We did a story about it this afternoon. Essentially, it's charging station meets check-in lounge, Mark.
Which is a brilliant idea.
Have you ever been to an executive check-in lounge before?
No, not a big proper one. I've been to one when I was flying with Air France once, and got free cans of Coke, so I was happy with that.
Yep.
But that was about it.
If anybody is flying, I don't know what it's like in the US, Valerie, but certainly in the UK, if you're flying out of an airport in the UK and you're going to Heathrow or whatever, any of the other airports, I did it last time I went from Bristol. If you've got a long flight planned, check into the one of their airport lounges, and it's something like £20. But for £20 per person, you get to check in. You get to, there's got TVs in there. You've got internet access. You've got power. Nice, comfortable seats. There's coffee. You get free breakfast if it's in the middle of, if it's in breakfast time. You can get any meal, any time of the day, free meals. And my local airport, there's only one power outlet outside of the airport lounges. They're very clever about it. So you have to know where this one power socket is, and it's right by the toilets, and you're kind of sat there on the floor by the entrance to the bathrooms, feeling very self-conscious. But paying for these airport lounges is brilliant, and this is the same idea for Charge Lounge. Essentially, you pay to charge your car, and then included in the rapid charging fee is access to this very nice, plush, well set up lounge area, free refreshments, nice comfy chairs, and free Wi-Fi. And it's a 30-minute break. Valery, would you pay extra for that?
Yeah, I think it makes total sense. Good. I think what would make even more sense is bundling it into, or at least in the United States, with a shopping center or something like that, right? So something like Stanford Shopping Center comes to mind, which is right here in Silicon Valley. That would be awesome.
That would be. And one of the things we have here, we have it on the motorway, but of course motorway service stations, rest stops, are overpriced. So you get overpriced coffee and whatever. My favourite ones, there's a couple on the M4, and they have Starbucks. They're franchised Starbucks, but they're separate from the main building, which means they have nicer seats, they have free Wi-Fi, and I can see my cars in each of them. I know exactly which seats I can sit in to keep an eye on my car while it's charging. So if somebody else arrives and they need a charge more urgently, I can drop in and let them do that. And actually, I think it's Jason I met earlier this week at a charge station. So I was sat there in Starbucks and he turned up and I rushed outside and let him charge first. So hello, Jason. I hope you listen to the show today. Finally, for our segment, BMW i3 price gouging. Price gouging is back, folks. Up to £5,000 on top of the standard manufacturer's recommended retail price for the i3. We got this story earlier this week from an electronaut who had a BMW Active E until recently, and this seems to be an ongoing problem, Mark.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to those dealer associations and the fact that there's the dealer network who quite rightly are, well, maybe not rightly, but they have to invest in the car. They buy the car first and then they've got to sell it on. So the more money they can sell it on for, the more profit they make. The difference in the model that Tesla wants to fight for, and we kind of have in the UK, although not quite, is that the manufacturer goes, this is the price of the car. And within that price is built in a certain amount of profit for the dealership and a certain amount of profit for them. And you don't tend to get first-hand cars changing in price in the UK, or at least not in my experience.
Interestingly, Jack Spratt, who's the Active E driver in question, said, what are we supposed to do when our centre holds us hostage with inflated lease rates and dealer-mandated packages that we don't want?
And that's what it comes down to, is these. I imagine these dealers are justifying it by going, well, we sell more of the top spec one, so we only order the top spec one. And then someone comes in and goes, well, I want a lower spec one. And they go, oh, well, we haven't got any of them in order.
Yeah.
Can you order me one? No, I can't. We only order the top spec one because it's the only one that sells.
The other way of doing this, and we had this with the Leaf, we had it with the Volt. We haven't had it with the Tesla. We did have it with the Fisker Karma behind you, Valerie. Same problem. But this is a normal thing in the States because dealers buy the cars up front and then sit them on their lots and then sell them to customers. In the UK, what you tend to do is you walk in. It's much more common, although some dealers do buy like end of model year cars and they'll stack them up on the lot, especially the more popular models. But things like electric cars, you generally go in, you sit down with the dealer, you talk about the car, you go for a test drive, and then you make a deposit if you decide to buy, and you go through the finance, and then you have to wait a couple of weeks, sometimes even a couple of months for your car to arrive. A friend of mine bought a Fiat 500 and it took her 6 months. She'd been paying the finance package. I thought she was completely nuts. She paid 6 months of the finance package before the car even arrived.
Wow.
Which is just insane. And this is not unusual. Anyway, on to the third part of the show with our big story that we've got Valerie on for. So watch this ad and we'll be right back. On to the third part. My Electric Avenue launched yesterday in the south of England. It's a really clever integrated project. It's a bit like the Pecan Street project that happened in the US recently with Chevy Volts. In the UK, this one is happening primarily with Nissan Leafs. And the idea behind it is to examine what happens when you have multiple electric cars all living in the same area. And they've built up these 11 different clusters around the UK of different areas where there are clusters of between, I think it's 8 and 10 cars in the same street, in the same subdivision, in the same electrical supply area, to see what happens when everybody comes home and plugs in. Now, as far as I can tell, the study is designed to help utility companies better plan for the future and also better implement the technology they've got. There was a gentleman from Scottish and Southern Energy who are one of the partners in this project, and he was there. He said, look, I'm an engineer. These power lines have been here for years and years and years. We welcome electric cars because it means that people are going to be using our networks. But at the same time, it's far more cost effective for us to figure out ways of managing the existing network we have than it is for us to spend millions or billions in ripping up the existing infrastructure and putting in new power lines. Because not only does it cost more money, but it's disruptive for our customers.
And the excess is there in general. The excess in our grid is there. It's the theoretical problem is everyone charging at once at the same time, and so that's what this study wants to look at is does everyone need to charge all night every night from the moment they get home to when they get in the car in the morning? Do some people get home, charge up, then go out in the evening or not? How often does that happen? And once they got these statistics, they know how to modulate the system they've got to best serve people who drive these cars, which will be more and more people in the future. It's really clever, and some of the technology they're using, which allows, if it detects that the grid is going to be oversaturated, it starts switching off the charging stations in turn. It doesn't just power one down and say, well, I'm sacrificing that car for the good of the rest. It turns one charging station off for half an hour,
then turns that one back on and turns another one off
for half an hour. So it staggers who it's turning on and off, and it's very clever. I'm guessing this is what I don't understand. I'm guessing that none of these cars can use their charge timer. They charge the moment they plug in.
I don't know,
would be the compromise.
Because I was asking about this technology, going, oh, can anyone with a Nissan Leaf join? And they said because they're using car wings data, which I didn't know, and they said no at the moment because to go back retrospectively and apply all the car wings data would be an absolute nightmare. Having spent, and the reason why this show is late going out live today. It took my local Nissan dealer, who are fantastic, by the way, 3 hours to fit a new radio into my car because something went wrong with the old one because it had to be registered with Car Wings and all of those other services. I can now understand why they don't want to go back and do it retrospectively. But all these people had signed up to and agreed to share their Car Wings data. So that's part of it. The Car Wings data obviously knows when the car's charging, etc., etc., etc. Now, the thing I found interesting is that I assume, although they didn't say, they could send the command to start charging over Car Wings. Frustratingly, there isn't a stop charging command. I don't know why. But this box, it's a very simple piece of technology. It's just an internet-enabled switch, essentially, that sits inside the charging station or sits near the charging station and means you can turn the charging station on and off. It's not two-way at the moment. They said, EA Technology, who's managing this, said, we wanted to start small. Eventually, maybe we will move to vehicle-to-grid tests. But for now, we want to know how we can control cars charging on the grid. Now, Valery, this is something you've got built into your juice box, isn't it?
Yeah, this is awesome, right? And this is exactly what we'll need in order to manage the load. But also, technologies like this, like I mentioned earlier in the show, will be some of the critical enablers of the infrastructure overall, right? Because to provide these services to the electric grid operators is very valuable. And with higher and higher penetration of EVs, you have, for the first time in the history of electricity distribution, for the first time you have a sufficient amount of storage at the place of residence and at work, really, right? When people go to work and they charge their cars there. That can make a difference for the electric operator, so for an ISO. Speaking of Juicebox, we are now working on the gradual control of the charging rate over the internet. So what will be built into Juicebox, actually hardware is already there. We're just working on software, and in about a couple of months, we'll have a release of the juice boxes that can have bi-directional data flow. So we already have monitoring. If you get a Wi-Fi enabled juice box, you can monitor your charging data already on the internet and soon on the smartphone app. But in a couple of months, you will also be able to control. And there will be an API, an open API that could be used with the owner's permission, of course, by a third party or a utility or us as an aggregator of demand. And we could have much more refined control over the combined charging rates. So we can react to signals not in just binary way, but also a continuous way. Right?
So I'm guessing this also, sorry to interrupt, so this also means somebody with a solar power solar panel array on their house, if their solar panels are only producing, say, 5 kilowatts, the car only charges at 5 kilowatts.
Yeah, that would work there too, right? Because otherwise they would overdraw the demand. So if you're off grid and your only source of power is your own, battery-backed maybe installation of a solar array, then yes, absolutely, right? It can be managed on the local scale, or it can be managed on the utility scale.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I'm so into this now. I've got a Ninja block that I've just got for my house, so I want to integrate when I move stateside. I want to integrate Ninja block, open vehicle monitoring system, juice box. I will be in heaven. Problem is, I never have any time to actually tinker because I'm always busy doing shows on electric vehicles. Next story, Mark.
Ooh, next story.
Do you want to introduce this one?
Well, I've got to put in the time code first.
All right, I'll do it.
You will give me lots of jobs to do, and then
right.
demand
there is
I
a
do
war
more.
being fought in the world on electric vehicle DIY charging stations. Now, we need a disclaimer, Mark. Do you want to do the disclaimer?
I can do the rest as well now. This story concerns a previous employer of mine and Nikki's. So yeah, they're called Zero Carbon World. They're a charity in the UK. So we thought we'd get that out there because
He just vanished as well. Valery, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, Mark's vanished. Oh no. Okay, we got to the important part. Mark, are you still there?
I'm here. Can you not hear me?
You just completely. You did kind of like the what was the name of that guy from the robotic guy? He wasn't actually robotic, from the 1980s. I've forgotten his name.
No idea.
Who did MTV?
Sorry.
Who did? It was anyway. You did like kind of.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it involves a previous employer of both Nikki's and mine. So we thought we'd get that out there first. They're a charity called Zero Carbon World for those who are interested. But the story is there is a trade association in the UK backed by Cenex, and it's made up of charging station providers and charging station network system people who called the UK EVSE Association, who have taken a strong stance on do-it-yourself charging stations. So charging stations that you buy various components of, you put together and use, hopefully in the process getting certified and then used. And they have written a letter to the charity, who have a video on their YouTube site showing a self-build day for a portable charging station, and saying that by promoting these do-it-yourself charging stations, they could be held liable for any damage or injury caused to someone who is using them, and essentially that it was very dangerous to be promoting this sort of technology because charging stations and EVSEs are inherently bad in untrained people's hands.
All right, so this is equivalent of doing your own DIY in the house electrical wiring, Valery. What are your views on this? Because obviously you support the open source community and the right to build and the right to modify, but also there is an element of if you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The concern is there, as no provider of any kind of services or products can control what people really do with their products. And the more open you make them, the more opportunity there is for mistakes to be made. right? So that's an absolutely true statement. But I think we had a little exchange on this recently, and I believe that open source charging stations or do-it-yourself charging station, especially the combination of the two, can be actually in some respects safer than the production ones. Like I mentioned before. In some of my conversations with you guys earlier, we've looked at a few production charging stations over time, and I would assure you that some of them inside look quite a bit worse than our juice boxes. Also, on the design side, by the virtue of our design, and there are a couple other designs like OpenEVSE comes to mind, at least in the US. By the virtue of the design being open sourced, every electrical engineer out there has a complete visibility into what the design does and what the schematics are and how things work. And every computer science engineer can examine the code. So whenever any issues or any potential faults happen, they get discovered very, very quickly. And we had that, happen a couple of times in the very beginning of our project, right? While it was in Kickstarter, we got a ton of useful comments and suggestions for various features from our backers, from our early users, and we implementing them really, really quickly. Some of the features were implemented by our users, right? So that level of visibility, I think, makes them quite a bit safer. But the mileage will vary. And there will be people who are maybe not qualified to work on such equipment that will try.
And that will happen regardless of someone showing them how to do it or not, right? I mean, it's like it's like the iFixit website. Okay, so iFixit is a website designed to encourage people to fix their tech instead of just throwing it away. If it's still a functional piece of tech, one of the classic ones is the iPhone. I've got an old iPhone. What is this one? It's an iPhone 3, I think. 3G. Which, has seen better days. But we fixed, and it just happened to have it. It got dropped on the floor, and one of the volume control knobs was broken, and so we opened it up and fixed it. I've replaced the screen on my old iPhone 4S, and my son's promptly dropped it this week, so we're going to have to replace that again and fix it again. And iFixit gives you the tools and the information and the contacts you need to be able to achieve that and to fix your own technology. But even it says at the very beginning, look, if you're not up to this task, you shouldn't be doing it. And it gives you a rating, doesn't it, based on how hard it thinks this technology is going to be to fix. So, for example, something like the Amazon Kindle is given a very, very high rating, in terms of difficulty. Something like a laptop, something like this laptop here, my old my MacBook Air, is very difficult to fix unless you happen to know exactly how to do it. The old chat room machine, which is here, it's the old G3. Anybody can pretty much take that apart and fix it, provided they're not being idiotic about it. So it's horses for courses, isn't it, Valery?
Yeah.
It's sensible technology, and it brings me very nicely back to your rapid charger project that you're working on at the moment. Now, you're looking to work with Leaf owners. Want you to help develop a way of emergency rescue for Leafs, right?
That's right. That's right. So again, this is one of the projects that's based on our previous experience in EV conversions, where we developed all our own power electronics on the charging side. And actually, this is an open source project for the last 3 years. And I think the associated forum on DIYelectriccar.com forum has something like 2,000 posts and 500,000 views at this point. And what we're doing is we're taking that open source project and augmenting it with some control hardware and software, also to be open sourced, to make it into a CHAdeMO compatible charger. And the way we are going to first use it is going to be providing EV roadside assistance to CHAdeMO compatible vehicles, of which in the US I think there are 2 or 3 types. Nissan Leaf, obviously, MiEV, and actually Zero Motorcycles, who we recently tested with. So
Wow.
the idea is the following, right? And I actually run out of juice myself on a leave. One of the weekends, like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and that's what gave me an idea that this is a needed service. So we were, coming back from a family outing, 4 people in the car with my kid, 2.5-year-old daughter, and we ran out of juice 3/4 of a mile from our house. I run back to my house, brought a car, moved my family back to the house, and then went back and called the AAA first, which is the auto club in the United States. And they were supposed to have charging trucks. But get this, the charging trucks, I was told, were working only Monday through Friday. Okay? So that was not very fortunate. Then I called Nissan Roadside Assistance, and they said, we don't have charging trucks. We have a flatbed truck tow truck that we can send over to you. So all in all, the ordeal took about 3 hours, and they towed me to a charging station. So, what you're going from is basically this, right? You run out of charge in the EV. It's a highly publicizable event. You're sitting on the side of the road in your brand new EV for 3 hours, and a big diesel truck shows up and tows you on top of it, right? So that's the experience that we have today. What we are trying to make is you run out of charge, you place a call or send a text message, and another EV shows up that is operated using our technology. It shows up, it gives you a quick boost. In 5 minutes, it gives you 10 miles of charge, and you're on your way, right? So it can be a 5-minute interaction. So that's what we're trying to do. And we are going to run a public demo of it, real demo of it, when we will take some roadside assistance calls in April this month.
Oh wow! We'd love to cover that. So we'll have to talk after the show and try and see how we can do that.
Brilliant.
That would be great. And it's this kind of possibility that's only really possible in the open source community, right?
That's correct. I mean, we wouldn't be able to get to where we are right now if it wasn't an open source project, put it simply. And like I said, the experience that we have with it comes from us working on the EV conversions and do-it-yourself electric cars in the first place. And we've got, again, just like with Juicebox, we got a lot of input and design suggestions from the community before we had a viable product. And this is just invaluable. The amount of energy, especially in this relatively early EV market, the amount of energy that people have with associated with their cars, with their electric vehicles, is staggering. And they're putting it to good use, and they're willing to contribute in an open source way. It's great.
I can't wait to see what you guys do next. I really can't. It's going to be amazing. If you don't already subscribe, there is a YouTube channel, isn't there, Valery, for you?
That's right. Tell
us your YouTube channel.
It's actually linked from our site. Our site is emotorworks.com. I believe you'll have a link to it.
We've got, got your lower third.
Yep.
So do check it out.
It's a little bit, sometimes it's a little bit too geeky what we post, and too kind of for electrical engineers / computer scientists, but a lot of people get a kick out of it.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Well, I'm neither, and I get a kick out of it. I as far as I'm concerned, I failed physics at school because I got a C, but apparently that's not failing in my head. If it's not an A, it's failing, and I've probably made loads of enemies now. I didn't know how to do natural logs, and to this day I still don't. And someone needs to teach me because I feel stupid about it, and I would have got a B, but I got a C because I failed one paper.
Or for the lack of a slide rule.
Didn't know how to use natural logs. Exactly, Mark. All right, on to the next bit before I embarrass myself. Volkswagen Golf GTE, Mark. I drove it a couple of weeks ago.
And I'm very jealous. Basically, it's Volkswagen's move into the plug-in hybrid market. It's taking a fuel-injected 1.6 litre engine. That's about my knowledge on engines, and it's coupling it with a 80 kilowatt electric motor. It's got a 7-speed DSG gearbox, which does a very clever thing of keeping in the right gear even when you're on electric drive, so that if the engine does have to kick in, it knows what gear it should be in. Very, very clever. It's getting its UK debut next week, but instead of it being at a motor show,
we don't have any motor shows in the UK though.
Yeah, so it's making its UK debut at a gadget show. Actually, the Channel 5's gadget show's big gadget show called the Gadget Show Live. If you don't know what the Gadget Show is, it's one of our terrestrial channels in the UK, one of the channels that everyone gets into their house as long as you pay your TV license. And it's a kind of geeky gadget review show mixed with comedy and explosions. So they tend to put technology through its paces, quite severely, in funny stits. It's very, very cool.
I don't want to make an analogy to Top Gear. It's like Top Gear without all the skepticism.
Yeah, it's the funny parts of Top Gear.
Yes,
with gadget reviews
bits and a brain writing it as well. It's got the fantastic Jason Bradbury as one of the hosts, and he is
need to get him on this show.
He is a well-known EV fan.
Yeah.
He did rode a motorbike recently around Wales, and we should get him on the show. I've got his contacts. I'll have to ping him and go, hey, Jace, come on. He won't come on until after the show's done, I don't think. But we should let him in. But my point is here, and I think you just alluded to it, Mark, is that gadgets and electric cars go really well together. Perfect combination.
It was the way we got into it, or at least the way I got into it, and I think it's very similar for you, that the gadget side of electric cars appealed to us more than any other part of it. And while the model needs to change, if these cars are going to get a wider public acceptance, they need to be just normalized. At the moment, there still is a massive geek market for these cars that isn't being tapped into. And having it on display in what's essentially one of the UK's biggest geeky tech shows is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. The thing I don't get, though, it's got the XL1 plug-in hybrid, which is only 250 limited run production car.
Yeah.
The E-Up, which is obviously the production electric up,
which you can test drive.
It's
awesome.
The GTE, which isn't due to launch until later this year in the UK. The one missing is the e-Golf, which is just about to go on sale. And I'm really interested as to why they didn't put that on. Whether they just did market research and went, oh, people aren't going to like it. Whether they're going to do it down gender lines. So they've got the super sexy, very futuristic XL1 for the complete and utter nerds who go, oh my God, that car is so awesome. They've got the E-Up for the ladies and the GTE for the guys. I have a horrible sinking suspicion that's the case. And I hope it isn't. Because that wouldn't make me very happy.
I was going more to... I think a lot of manufacturers are still very skeptical about fully electric cars, and they've paid a lot for their stand. They could only have 3 cars on it. The XL1 makes sense because it's their future-looking car. The GTE makes sense because it is kind of the one the geeks will be interested in that they could possibly buy. And the e-Golf makes sense because it's a car they can test drive. And I imagine it was just that. They had a toss-up between the e-Golf and the E-Up, and went with the E-Up.
Maybe. All right, final story. Daily Mail hates electric cars. Absolutely hates electric cars, doesn't it, Mark?
It does, but do you know what it hates more?
Europeans. Valerie, you have the similar problem in the US. Fox News hates EVs, right?
Yeah.
But what Fox News hates more is politicians.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of polarization here in various places, yeah.
So we had a story here about... this is brilliant. The European Union has now voted in favour of making all electric cars and hybrid vehicles, although we note it doesn't mention anything about hydrogen fuel cell cars. Now, the part of my brain that says, okay, well, hydrogen fuel cell cars are quiet too. And then there's another part of my brain who's actually driven the Honda FCX Clarity going, yeah, last time I drove a fuel cell car, it was really noisy. But this European Union mandate is now, within 5 years, all EVs and hybrid cars on sale will have to have some form of noise generator built in. It's the law. At the same time, petrol, diesel cars and buses and lorries and motorcycles will have to reduce their noise output by about an average of 4 decibels.
Every year.
Every year.
So they've gone, this set of cars over here, you're too noisy, you're bad, you're making the world a noisy, horrible place. These set of cars over here that are doing what we want you to do, they're too quiet. They need to make more noise.
Because people won't hear them. That's their argument. Yeah,
and it comes from safety. It's this idea that blind people won't see them, so they won't hear them, then they step out. The elderly won't hear them, young kids. But without any statistics to back it up.
I've done some tests in my local neighbourhood. I know a couple of people locally who are blind, and I've driven up past them on purpose slowly and then wound the window down and gone, sorry, did you just hear me drive past? I went, yeah.
Yeah, they're not, and I'm fairly sure people don't just walk out into roads. It's not based on any evidence. The studies that have been done into it haven't proved that Priuses, because the Prius has been around for a long time operating on electrical power at slow speeds, they're not involved statistically in any more any higher low impact collisions than any other car. It's just based off of this. We need to do something. It's this mentality of, oh, this sounds a bit worrisome. Oh,
yes.
And
yes,
it's annoying.
Although, people don't hear. I think there are more important things, certainly in the UK, that need to be tackled when it comes to road safety. I mean, yesterday, very tragically, and yet another cyclist was killed in London when he was involved in a collision with a large lorry. And how many deaths have we had this year in cyclists in London, Mark? Too many.
Too many. London has a huge problem because it's transitioning towards a more cycle-based way of getting around, but they haven't made enough cycle lanes yet.
And it's driver education every time someone's being killed because of a driver error, not because of a cyclist not hearing. And it's never been an electric vehicle. It's always been a large vehicle. And you can't hear in London anyway. Anyone who's driven or walked through London knows in the rush hour you can't hear anything anyway. So, noisemakers would have to be pretty loud at that point. And then we think about cars like the Rolls-Royce Phantom. It's just very quiet.
Yeah, and that's what gets me with this, is that the very high-end cars, the Rolls-Royces, the Bentleys, have put lots and lots of money, multiple millions of pounds, into finding a way to make them glide down the road as if they're on air, so they don't make this noise, and then they're not being told to make more noise. But the electric cars are. Yeah. And it's probably on about a parity because one car's just got that much sound insulation and electric cars just don't make the noise. And it's annoying. So I guess I would be happier with this rule if it said cars that make less than this amount of noise at this speed have to have a device that pushes them over this limit. If it said that, I wouldn't have a problem. But the fact it specifically says electric cars, that's the issue.
The problem. The really funny thing, though, about this all is that the Daily Mail, who normally hates electric cars, has been standing up for electric cars because those bloody fools in Europe are telling us that we have to make noisy cars that are quiet and loud cars quieter and quiet cars noisier. What on earth do they think they're doing? This is the reason we should be out of the European Union. How was my Daily Mail reader impression, Mark?
It was quite good. You didn't mention house prices, though.
Oh, and the house prices are going up because all of the immigrants are coming in, all the rich people are coming in and they're buying all the houses, and then we can't afford to buy the houses despite we having 2 yachts and a horse.
Yes, that's better.
I'm sorry, that was really bad. Valery, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, but, you can expect, it's, again, part of human psychology, right? Something new comes in and people want to, regulate it more because they don't know about it, right? So, an interesting example comes to mind, all the, electric car fires that are blown out of proportion, right? Nobody pays attention to, I think in the US, it's something like over 200,000 gasoline car fires a year, right? And nobody pays attention to that. Maybe local news, right? But when Tesla goes on fire, it's national news, regardless of the reason, and there are only like 3 or 4 of them. So you have this huge over-index on, wanting to do something about new technology, right?
Yeah.
People are just afraid of new. That's what it is.
Oh well, it did give us a laugh at the Daily Mail reader's expense, though. That really is it. Thanks very much for joining us, Valery. Will you come back on again? He's gone quiet now. No, I don't know if you heard that. Valery, will you come back on again?
Oh, yes.
Of course. Fantastic. It may have been a breakdown in the connection. This is why we need a studio, Mark. We'll be back at it's the best answer yet. We'll be back next week at this time, which is 5:30 p.m. British time, which is 9:30 on the West Coast and 12:30 on the East Coast. You can find us at www.transportevolve.com. You can find us on YouTube. We now have a podcast, don't we, Mark? Other than this one, TEN.
TEN is now officially a podcast. You can find it on iTunes and it has a feed, so you can stick it in any pod device you have.
And we're working on some new shows. We're also, as you can probably tell, we're working very hard to make ourselves as professional as we possibly can on zero budget, basically. So come back next week. Thank you for watching if it was your first time. And until next time, folks, don't forget to plug in. See you soon. Take care. Bye.